Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the divine being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the divine being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the Sunday talk. Just a couple of things in the way of announcements. Swami Vivekananda's birthday was January 12th. Swami Brahmananda's birthday is January 21st, according to the Gregorian calendar. But we don't celebrate their birthdays, their Titi Pujas, according to the Gregorian calendar. We celebrate them according to the lunar calendar. And so both those birthdays will be celebrated together in early February. Aditya Chaturvedi has already said that he would serve as our pujari, bless him. And so in this next week's newsletter, the date will be announced. Next week, there will be an open forum on the subject of bhakti. And I hope you'll come to that. We will send with the newsletter a worksheet for our open forum on bhakti. It'll be in the form of a PDF. So you'll be able to download it and print it, or just pull it up on your screen as you need on the 24th, I guess that would be the 17th, 20 plus 7 would be the 24th. And then at the end of the month, on the 31st, we will have a talk on Swami Vivekananda's Bhakti Yoga. I don't think there are any other announcements of any great moment, except to say that it probably will not be until May, and that we will be meeting together as a congregation again. And even that is a question mark. It just depends on how the vaccine rollout goes, how many people are actually vaccinated, and so on. So we're being flexible and fluid on that. Can anyone think of an announcement that should have been made that was not made? Please speak up if you do know of something. All right. January is a month for the study of Bhakti Yoga. A Bhakti yogi, a bhakta, has a devotional relationship with God. This is developed over time by study, prayer, ritual, and worship. As a bhakta, you practice giving every action, thought, emotion, perception, and tendency a Godward turn. Everything you are, both positive and negative, is offered to the divine presence. Your prayer is for the carefree self-surrender of a child in its mother or father's arms, and ultimately union with your beloved. This morning's topic is itty-bitty austerities. Itty-bitty austerities. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder, children of her love. Every rung goes higher, higher. Every rung goes higher, higher. Every rung goes higher, higher. Children of his love. Children, do you want your freedom? Children, do you want your freedom? Children, do you want your freedom? Children of her love. Keep on climbing, you will make it. Keep on climbing, you will make it. Keep on climbing, you will make it. Children of his love. They are waiting to take your hand, yes. They are waiting to take your hand, yes. They are waiting to take your hand, children of their love. Children of their love. Children of their love. The divine being, that living presence, wants us, invites us to succeed in spiritual life. As was noted last Sunday, that presence, when taking human form, is willing to undergo great inconceivable penances for our sake. They purify themselves, shed all the blemishes, as it says in the Chandi, so they can gather spiritual treasures and share them with us. Swami Vivekananda wrote of Sri Ramakrishna, "How great was thy sacrifice, freely choosing thy birth in this prison, our iron age, to unchain us and set us free." Swamiji also noted that divine incarnations make themselves easy of access to us. Jesus Christ said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Easy of access to us. And Sri Ramakrishna said, "The sum and substance of the whole matter is that a man must love God, must be restless for him. You will realize him if you have that yearning. Then he himself will let you know what he is like. If you must be mad, why should you be mad for the things of the world? If you must be mad for God alone. Practice just a little, and someone will come forward to help you." Easy of access to us. This morning we will discuss these and other quotes that show how little is really required of us if our desire for freedom is earnest and sincere. So what are our itty-bitty austerities? This itty-bitty austerities title was chosen as a counterpoint, as a counterpart to the great inconceivable penances that the great teachers are able and willing to undergo for our sake. What must we do? The first thing, and this is critically important, this is the first austerity, and it is an austerity. Embrace the idea that you are one of the chosen. Embrace the idea that you are one of the chosen. It's time for you to head for home. Christ said, "Ye have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you that ye should go and bring forth fruit, and that your fruit should remain, that whatsoever ye shall ask of the Father in my name, he may give it to you." If we embrace that idea, that the reason you're sitting on the other side of this screen this morning is that you have been chosen. As Swami Prabhavananda, my teacher, would say, if you stick on, by that he meant if you remain sincere, earnest, and continue your practice as best you can, he said, if you stick on, you will succeed. Sri Ramakrishna. If we think about Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Ramakrishna taught for about 20 years, from about 1866 to 1886. During that time, we can conservatively estimate that he had 20 to 30,000 unique visitors during those 20 years of teachings. And yet about 100 disciples, 16 monastic disciples, something between 80 and 85 lay householder disciples. If we think of the millions of people that surround us, and yet you are here, now you are drawn here to these teachings. It has nothing to do with me. This is not something, I'm not talking about drawn to me, Shankara. No. This is just an instrument for the teachings. So it's very important for us to understand that we are being invited. We are chosen. Next of our itty-bitty austerities, take to heart the instructions of the Guru. Now, you may have a human guru, a human teacher, but if you ask that teacher will say, God alone is the Guru. God alone is the Guru. So take to heart the instructions of the Guru. He has left instructions scattered all over the world over thousands of years. Truth is one. Sages call it by many names. So the instructions have been scattered all over the world over thousands of years. Find the expression of the truth of how to get home, that most appeals to you, and stay with those instructions. Sri Ramakrishna, before you came here, you didn't know who you were. Now you will know. It is God who, as the Guru, makes you know. Before you came here, you didn't know who you were. Now you will know. It is God who, as the Guru, makes one know. Isn't that a joyous thought? We are chosen. We are instructed. Yet one of the habits that we have that doesn't serve us well is once we get attuned to the fact that there are all these instructions, we keep finding reasons to read more and more instructions. Read another book, listen to another talk, listen to someone from another tradition give a talk. Is any of that wrong? No, it's not wrong. It's just that it's not going to lead you as fast as if you lay off that shravana, that hearing and hearing and hearing the same thing said over and over in different ways. Lay off that shravana and emphasize manana. What is manana? Manana means a thing of the mind. It is our mind that is our enemy, in that it tries to control through egoistic ways, tries to control us and assert that it is in control. But it is also our friend. It is trainable. It is neuroplastic, as the scientists say. What is manana? Manana is taking the teachings that you know, the teachings that you have learned, and steadily and steadily comparing how you think, speak, and act, how you actually speak, think, and act, compare that with the truths that you've been taught. For example, does the way you think, speak, and act indicate that you believe the body is very important? Well, the teachings are that the body is just a garment. As Sri Ramakrishna says, just a pillowcase. It's an action and experience suit that we have for participating in this. So if we think the body is, if we exaggerate the importance of the body in the way that we think, talk, and act, then we are missing an important point of spiritual progress. That's just one form of manana. There are many instructions. We'll go over some of them this morning. But the idea is to look at who you actually are now in the way you think, talk, and act, and compare that and contrast that with the way that the teachers say we should think, talk, and act. It isn't that you're wrong for being who you are now. That's not the point. You are who you are because that's how far you've come. But if you're to continue on your way home, you must not remain there. The way to make that progress is, in Sanskrit, manana. It's a kind of reasoning, but it isn't having to figure it out for yourself. It's just being honest with yourself about what it is that you actually think, say, and do, and comparing and contrasting that with the higher truth that is taught to us, left to us by the great teachers. So the austerity is to lay off Shravana and spend more time with manana. Does that mean you should never read another book? No. Does it mean you shouldn't join us on Monday nights to enjoy the wonderful testimony of 12 saints in the book Love Poems from God? No, doesn't mean that. But you'll notice that in the conversation that is had about those lovely poems of truth and joy, that the conversation is, how do I apply this? And what do they want me to understand that it will allow me to apply it? So what are some of the most important, from this perspective, what are some of the most important truths that are the substance of our austerities? First, be up and doing. This is what Sri Krishna says to Arjuna. Get up off that seat, grab your weapons, and fight that good fight, Arjuna. We have to be up and doing. It's not a passive thing. Swami Vivekananda, translating and interpreting from the Upanishads, said, arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached. And as I said earlier, Swami Prabhavananda said, if you do that, you will reach the goal, either before you pass out of this body or at the time that you pass out of this body. That was his promise. This illumined soul, direct disciple of Swami Brahmananda, who was the spiritual son of Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. He learned this at Brahmananda's knee. So the second of our misperceptions that really stands in our way, the first being that, well, I don't have to be that active. The second is, you are not the body. You are not the body. The body is an action and experience suit you wear to participate in the life of Jagat, universe. Jagat is Sanskrit for all that is. We say universe. Jagat is a living being of which you are an inseparable part, but not in the limited form of the body. The limited form, the body, is nothing more than an action and experience suit that you wear to participate in the life of Jagat. And as I've said, and this will be in a couple of months, I'll actually read this out. But if you want to find it before, read the last 4 pages of chapter 4 of Swami Vivekananda's Raja Yoga, in which he explains what it is we're doing in these action and experience suits, how it comes to an end, and what happens then. The third small austerity that we can arrive at by manana is to realize that what you are seeking, the way home, is known to you within your heart of hearts. Vivekananda emphasizes this again and again in a variety of his teachings. Sri Ramakrishna also, Christ also. What you are seeking, the way home, is already known to you within your heart of hearts. Yet that knowledge is not accessible through the outward directed mind and senses available to you as you begin your journey. The mind and senses change, and your relationship to the mind and senses change as you go on your journey, as they are, in the words of the scriptures, purified. As it says in Chaitanya's prayer, his prescription, his way of awakening your knowledge of the way home is, chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean and quenched that mighty forest fire, worldly lust raging furiously within. O name stream down in moonlight on the lotus heart, opening its cup to knowledge of thyself. So what he's saying is that the name will cause the heart to awaken to the knowledge that's already there. What is available to the mind and senses as you start your journey? What is available to the mind and senses? Records of what great teachers all have told us. Seek within, and here's how to do that work. That's what's available to us as Shravana and Manana, the records of what the great teachers all have told us. Seek within, and here's how to do that work. The records are so abundant. Here's just a little tiny list. The Yoga Vashishta, the teachings to Rama. The Bhagavad Gita, Krishna to Arjuna. Sermon on the Mount, Christ's teachings to his near and dear disciples. And so on and on. The teachings of Buddha, Shankaracharya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Patanjali, Muhammad, Sri Ramakrishna. So as was said earlier, seize on that system of teachings from God as the Guru in that form and stay with it. Not that you pay no attention to anything else, but that becomes, because that's what appeals to you, seize on it and stay with it. The next obstacle that is an austerity for us, it is this: the things of this universe, including all material objects, as well as every thought, feeling, and perception you experience, are not in any sense yours. They are a creation of Jagat for its own purposes and are ever changing. So don't give them too much importance. As Christ said, don't store up your treasure where moths can eat and rust can corrode. Find the kingdom, store up your treasure there. So these things that are the creation of Jagat for its own purposes, ever-changing. Don't give them too much importance. Be a witness. The great difficulty, this is from Swami Madhavananda, who was a president of the Ramakrishna order. The great difficulty in making spiritual progress in everyday life is not that we are in the world, but that we tend to become attached to what we do. It is not work that binds. It is attachment that binds. I'm going to repeat that. This is Swami Madhavananda, a relatively recent president of the Ramakrishna order. The great difficulty in making spiritual progress in everyday life is not that we are in the world, but that we tend to become attached to what we do. It is not work that binds. It is attachment that binds. So the next of the austerities is, how do we unburden ourselves from the things of the world and our attachment to them? To unburden yourself from all that appears to unburden yourself from all that appears in your presence. Offer it all without exception, without judgment as to its worthiness, back to its creator. If you want the details of this particular instruction, they're very nicely summarized by Sri Krishna in chapters 3 and 4 of the Gita. Offer it all without exception, without judgment as to its worthiness, back to the creator. If you get in the habit of doing this regularly, with sincerity, you become free of the cause and effect, karmic results of your actions and experiences. Sri Ramakrishna said, one cannot completely get rid of the 6 passions, lust, anger, greed, and the like. Now notice he's listing those that we typically think of as detrimental, inauspicious. You cannot completely get rid of the 6 passions, lust, anger, greed, and the like. Therefore, one should direct them to God. If you must have desire and greed, then you should desire love of God and be greedy to attain him. And he means in the most tamasic sense, demand. Give me love. Give me the experience. Nothing passive about it at all. Then you should desire love of God and be greedy to attain him. If you must be conceited and egoistic, then feel conceited and egoistic, thinking that you are the servant of God, the child of God. This is from the Gospel. The page numbers will be listed when well, just so you'll know, it's 224, page 22 and 428. But you don't have to write those down. When the notes go up, they'll be there. The next, and this is perhaps the greatest of our relatively small austerities, because it's so counterintuitive to the way our left mind has learned to be and therefore to think, speak, and act. And this austerity is to realize, to come to understand that God alone is the doer. you as a jiva, an apparently individual human entity, are not doing anything, even though you actually are an inseparable part of Jagat, that infinite eternal being that is doing everything. But as this individual separate sense self, it is not the doer. This cannot be understood intellectually. As I said, it is so counterintuitive and so not the way that our left mind thinks. It cannot be understood intellectually. It is a matter of inner spiritual experience. Sri Ramakrishna said, the nearer you come to God, the more you feel peace. Peace, 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 supreme peace. The nearer you come to the Ganges, the more you feel its coolness. You will feel completely soothed when you plunge into the river. Plunging into the river is that realization that you are not the doer, that it is a matter of inner spiritual experience. Before I read the final passage, it's a good time to do this together, as we're always invited to do. Anything that you would like to contribute, ask, comment? A lot has been covered about what our austerities are. Anything to say or ask about all of that?
I'll say something. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Tom.
Okay, so this thing about I'm not the doer, I think it's true, or in like Western Western philosophical tradition, it would be that free will is an illusion. So I'm not the doer, and that seems to be the case. But then why am I making any effort? I mean, it's not me making any effort, so why should I ever try?
Well, because you're invited to. You have this feeling of restlessness, which is also part of God's doing. It's not your doing, it's God's doing.
Do anything.
Hmm?
I mean, I can't do it. It seems like a paradox that the more I think about it, the more I feel like I can't put it into words and that concepts don't work. Because if I'm not the doer, then I don't have to do anything. I can't do anything. All I can do is just, I don't know what I can do. Hang out.
Well, you're doing it right this minute.
I guess I am, or
Yes,
some
you
higher
are.
power is doing it. That it's just an illusion that I'm doing it, and what's talking to you right now is the universe.
Well, that's what we're taught. If we go below if you read chapters 3 and 4 of the Gita, 2, 3, and 4 probably, you'll see Krishna's explanation in some detail. That it is indeed universe talking to universe. And that the universe has created this jagat, this way of being many, in order to experience that. And that's why I said to read a very poetic and beautiful exposition of how that's understood by Swami Vivekananda. You can read the last 4 pages of his book, of chapter 4 of Raja Yoga. It is a paradox, and Sri Ramakrishna says these paradoxes and counterintuitive aspects all of this resolve themselves when you come into the neighborhood of God. And so it can't be answered in words. You're right, Tom. It can't be spoken in words with any complete accuracy. John Dobson tried even with mathematics in something called the equations of Maya, which is Maya is another word for Jagat. So yes, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Tom,
Yes.
I think you just need to get your pair of ducks in a row. But seriously, I think I'm not even sure if it is a paradox. What if it's just that they're both true? You know, I'm doing this, whoever I am, and universe is doing this, and then all these other levels in between. They're just different angles of looking at the same thing, but they're all true. And you can't do nothing. You can't go, well, I'm not the doer, so why should I do anything? Because you can't. You're an embodied being, and that's in the Gita somewhere. You must act, isn't it?
Yes.
I don't know where, but it's there. That we don't have a choice as long as we're embodied, and maybe even when we're unembodied, we don't even know about that yet. But it's like the fact that we talk about it or try to talk about this truth that we are not the doer. It's not that we're supposed to like, oh, okay, I'm totally there now. It's that it changes, it alters our way of being in the world. Just to talk about it or think about it or go, yeah, I believe that's true, like you started out with. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
Beautiful. And as Vivekananda said, we do not move from error to truth. That's why I said none of us is wrong or inappropriate. We do not move from error to truth. We move, if you will, from lower truth to higher truth. So the counterintuitive aspect of I am not the doer is simply a lower truth. I am the doer, looking at a higher truth and saying, how can that be so? And as Swami Sridharananda said, we slowly and slowly move from the simple assertion, I am, to the absolute unqualified statement, thou art.
Brother Shankara, I think I have
Yes.
a somewhat of a response to Tom, and I think these logical paradoxes, a lot of them. So the paradox depends on a separation between, the being that's acting and then the object of the action or the affection. But what's interesting is that when the action occurs in the direction or in the direction of love or along that dimension, there's a collapse between the distinction between self and other. And when that difference is eliminated, then the grounds or the basis for the paradox is also eliminated, since the paradox depends on that difference. There's an interesting quote from Nietzsche, actually, who said the greatest act of will is simultaneously an act of submission. And the way that I understand that is, it's kind of like if you're presented with the opportunity to do something which is incredibly beautiful, then you freely choose to do it, because how could you not? So you're simultaneously surrendering into beauty and acting, because in the dimension of union with the beautiful, through the act of loving action, that distinction is collapsed, and at that moment, the paradox is resolved.
So very beautifully said.
That's
Thank
my
you
understanding.
so very much. Exactly. But it is, as you said, it is simultaneously an act of will and an act of submission.
Shankara,
And there be in that simultaneity, all else collapses.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
I wanted to add, it's also a question of emphasis. Where do you put the stress? It's a matter of perspective as well as accentuating what you are doing. For example, if you ask a child, did you do it? And it looks at the tone of the mother's voice. Did you do it? No, I did not do it. He feels very offended and guilty. But if just as a matter of fact, you say, okay, I want to know who did this, then you objectively say, yes, I did it. But if you say, I did it, not he, I take the credit for what this is. So therein comes the pride, the ego.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing wrong in, I'm talking to Tom right now, that of course we all are motivated to do something. Krishna says in Gita, Nityam Kuru Karmasva, regularly perform your duties, whatever they are. If the sun does not rise in the sky, the whole world go dark. If everything in the universe does not perform its allotted task, the whole universe will collapse. But it is the underlying sentiment which prompts you to act. This needs to be done. Okay, cooking. That's my dharma. But if I say, is there anyone who cooks like me? There comes in the ego.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a distinction of highlighting and thinking like that little puppy who is running under the cart. I am carrying the burden of the whole universe. He actually is walking underneath. So that's why offer whatever you do without taking that doership. Nothing is wrong. One must act. And one can honestly say, yes, yes, I contributed this thing to the universe. But it is the emotion and the sentiment behind what you say that is important. That's what I think.
Beautiful. And the thing that is so comforting for us to understand is that everything is just as it should be.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful poem by St. John of the Cross about, the title of the poem is Development. And it says, if God wanted to teach you to play chess,
Mhm.
where would the chess pieces be on the chessboard? Exactly where they would best be for your development, which is a chess term.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so be easy in your mind. Everything is all right. Though sometimes that's very hard to realize.
Brother Shankara,
Yes.
this is
Steve.
Keith. I just kind of had a thought. It almost seems like we're all very small parts of a gigantic puzzle that only fits together when we all fulfill our dharma.
Yes. That is, yes. Every name completes me. Every soul completes me. That's a line from another poem in Love Poems from God.
Kind of like the net of Indra, the net of gems.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Brother Shankara.
Yes, please.
I have a question about manana. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, uh-huh.
So as a college student, I kind of have the inclination to read a handful of books at any time.
Mm-hmm.
So for manana, do I have to center myself on a teacher or a handful of teachers who I feel some resonance with, to who I kind of use as this basis of comparison you're talking about?
Well, this is optimal. It's not, there's no such thing as doctrine or dogma here. You know, it's just what is optimal for your progress. You find a spiritual lineage, a spiritual tradition, a great teacher, whatever it is that, and how they present it. If that resonates with you, then have a working faith, and then you take those teachings that they're giving you. They're saying, and the realization of the deep truth comes from within us when we uncover that truth. So all of these things that they're telling us are ways to uncover that truth. They're pointers in the direction, they're signposts. So we have to understand, oh, well, I haven't been tracking that direction, I've been tracking another direction. They're telling me that I'll uncover what I need to uncover if I move in this direction and I do it in this way. And so then I think about what it is that I actually, on a daily basis, think, which produces the way I speak and the way I act. And I compare and contrast that with the teachings of that teacher or lineage or whatever it is that I have embraced. And so then I move forward according to their teachings. And the practice of meditation, some sort of contemplation, concentration, and meditation is almost always a part of that, so that we are beginning to look within for the truth that already exists within us.
I just wanted to add to
Please.
that, you know, it seems to me this idea of doing is the reason why Krishna asks Arjuna to think about that is to get him to realize that in his soul of souls, he is the witness of his actions.
Mm-hmm.
And that so often, I think this came up already, but it's trying to get us to think about our motive for acting.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's it's selfish or if it's selfless. Like Krishna says, he comes down, he has nothing to gain from working. He loves the world, so he works. But then he says, you are in me too.
Mm-hmm.
And so he is both a guide and an example. So the highest kind of work we can do is through love.
Mm-hmm. Which is exemplified in the fact that Arjuna and Krishna are dear friends. That's the basis of their relationship.
And you know, someone brought up Nietzsche earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, the issue with Nietzsche, I always bump heads with him, so to speak, is well, first of all, his idea of God as multiple rather than single, which I think he had a disagreement with Schopenhauer, with whom Swamiji also has a disagreement in a bit of a way, though I think he's closer to Schopenhauer than he is to Nietzsche, because with Nietzsche, the central idea is that, well, the famous quote, God is dead, but it doesn't end there. It goes on to, God is dead, God remains dead. It is we who have killed him, so on and so forth. What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What festivals of atonement? What sacred games shall we have to invent? Now, the tragedy of that to me is that it misses that. I mean, how can you think of God in such finite terms?
Well, yes.
He's infinite. And, to objectify God is, I think it's it's a bit suicidal to say God is that we are capable of killing God, because how can that be? If God is eternal, therefore we are eternal, and it just I think it's self-defeating.
Well, we noticed that Swamiji has many more followers around the world now than Nietzsche. So there may be some import to that. Well, I haven't studied Nietzsche, so I really can't comment on what he meant when he said God is dead. But clearly, it was only a temporarily persuasive idea.
Yeah, but he really did rely a lot on, as far as I recall, on Hinduism or ideas that he borrowed to various ends, like the idea of eternal recurrence and so on. But it's also that this idea of the will, of the multiple wills clashing.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I mean, this is just something Nietzsche I keep coming up against in my own studies, is this problem of the will, and I think that came up earlier too. But when you submit yourself to an infinite will, there is no idea of competing wills, at least in the Advaitic sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are definitely stories in the Puranas about competing wills.
Brother Shankara.
Yes, Robert.
Yeah. From the talk today, it brought three things to the forefront of my mind.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, up front, you were talking about the self not being the body by having a suit on. It made me think of, now, a perfect example of that is we go out into space now. And if you're going to go out in space, you need to put on a suit that will allow you to survive out there. So it makes it perfectly logical that if a soul is coming into this physical environment, he would have to put on a suit that will allow him to survive here. That's the one thing. The second thing was about the doer, about God being the doer. With the realization of that gives you a higher level of appreciation for God.
Yes.
And that attaches to the idea of attachments. Because if you're not attached to something, then it is not yours. It is value, its value is diminished considerably, which allows you the space and the logic of not being attached, because it's not yours.
Yes.
And in another sense, it is yours because you are he.
Well, but in that you are he frame of reference, there's no attachment because it's always changing.
Yes.
But then the question for me is, if God is the doer, then how can there be competing wills? Because his will is supreme.
Well, there's God in one frame of reference and God in another frame of reference.
But it's still one.
Well, but that
there are no competing wills.
That's not.
No, I agree with that.
That's not how it's spoken of in this long competition between Brahma and Vishnu. I mean,
Well, in the sense of thy will be done.
Well, dear, we don't have any disagreements. Please, I'm not disagreeing.
Oh no,
I'm simply
not
saying.
disagreement.
I'm
just,
simply
just
saying that
for
within
my, clarification.
within even the lineage and tradition we're talking about, there are stories of competing wills. And it's all one will behind, sure. It's mother's play behind, you can say. But when you take a doctrinaire stand that there's only this, well, there's some evidence, at least in the scriptures, of that as well.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
Hi. Do I have time for a quick comment and a question?
Yes.
The comment I wanted to sort of make is this whole exercise that we have of having doubts and resolving and having doubts and resolving itself is kind of like a joy or a bliss, like a game of seesaw. We go up and then we go down and we go, and it's so much fun when we played that as children. My question is, in that part of your talk, you talked about storing things and not storing. I mean, I don't remember the exact words, but don't store something. Can you clarify that?
Well, don't value the things of the world because they will simply go away. If you treasure the things of the world, and Christ just uses two ready examples from the time that he lived in. Don't store up your treasure where moths can eat. In other words, moths will destroy valuable cloth, or where rust can corrode. And again, this was before the invention of rustless metals, rust-free metals. And so everything that was made of metal would corrode other than gold. And so he was just saying, don't put value on things of the world that will change, and no matter how much you want to hold on to them, they will self-destruct, so to speak. But store up your treasure in the kingdom within, where these things do not happen. There is, once you have achieved the knowledge of God, that does not change. It may become higher and higher. As Sri Ramakrishna said, there are thousands of kinds of samadhi.
Brother Shankara, I wanted to comment something on the subject of free will. Is that the feeling that we are free is, after all, a feeling. So it is something in the mind. And as the mind is subject to God's will, so it is determined by the, just like the body is determined, so the mind is also determined. So the feeling or the illusion that we are free, that the mind is free, is also determined from the past or by God's will. Now, sages like Aurobindo, I've read, they say that this illusion has been put by God into us for our own good. And then when we are ready to not have this illusion, then this illusion will go away. But as long as we have this illusion for our put into us by our own by God for our own good, we should utilize it for a higher purpose. For example, by spiritual practices, when we perform them, we may have the feeling that I am performing it. But by the virtue of performing them at a later stage, one would overcome this illusion. And
Very well said. And it's a perfect segue to the last. I said I would read something else. And what you said is a perfect segue to that. These words are from Swami Yatishwarananda. As you may know, Swami Yatishwarananda was a disciple of a direct disciple. I've forgotten which one. Disciple of a direct disciple. He was also the guru of the founder of this place, Swami Yogeshananda. He later became a vice president of the Ramakrishna order, and this is what he said. And it so perfectly fits with what you just were commenting. The highest ideal, as Swami Vivekananda has said, is this: first, let us ourselves be gods, and then help others to be gods. If we advance to some extent, we can help others also to advance to some extent. This is how we have to put into practice Swamiji's great ideal: to work for your own illumination and spiritual emancipation, and at the same time to render service to others. As we improve, we can also help others to improve in our own humble way. As we do our spiritual practices, as we progress in our spiritual path, let us try to be of service to others. This is the twofold way which will help us to attain inner purity, which will help us to attain divine presence, divine love, and divine bliss. There is this great ideal before us, and let us proceed, each one in his own way, toward its advancement step by step. Let us be sure of every inch of the ground. And that last sentence is very, very important. We work from sincerity and earnestness, not from sentimentality. It's just a good idea.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
I wanted to comment on the things of the world about which we just discussed. Why not to put too much of our attachment and our ego to whatever we have? Suppose I'm a talented singer. Suppose I'm an artist or a writer or whatever. That it does not say that you do not pursue whatever you have to pursue in life, in this world, but do not ever think it belongs to you, because the first words of Isha Upanishad, it clearly says that tena tyaktena bunchita, that everything in this world is pervaded by God. Nothing belongs to you. So you are as if on a rented property. Your body is given to you for a certain time. All your faculties, everything that you are taking pride in, all that you enjoy, but with the idea of renunciation. So that idea of letting it go once your road is over, and don't be possessive of whatever it is in the world. So that's how I think the idea of non-possession and renunciation. These two are attached to everything we do in this world. So he says, feel free to enjoy the world, but in the back of your mind, remember, you have to vacate the field one day.
Oh, yes.
Because nothing belongs to you.
Yes. Thank you, Uma. You're absolutely right. And thank you for quoting from the Isha.
Thank you.
Anything else from anyone?
So
Yes.
not only I'm trying this on my iPhone today. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, very good. Oh, very good. Glad it works. Yeah, so we're not only on rented property, we're on borrowed time, I think. You had mentioned the quote from Swami Prabhavananda: those who stick on, if you do not achieve realization during your lifetime, then the master will give you his grace at the time of death.
Yes.
I think that's pretty significant that he said that for several reasons.
Well, yes. And that's why it's very heartwarming to think we are invited to this. We are chosen. We're here this morning doing this together because we, out of the several billion who are in this world now, are some of those who have been called to study these things and to, if we stick on, achieve the goal.
Right, and that's inspiring because the events of January 6th really made me lose faith, but this is coming from a God-realized master who, as far as I can tell, never told an untruth, and a disciple of a direct disciple of Ramakrishna. So I believe this is true.
Yes, and the things of January 6th are part of that which arises and passes away. And however heartrending they were and they are heartrending. There's no two ways about it.
And discouraging, because to see what we believed were highly evolved human beings behave so feral is just so disheartening.
Oh, please don't go there, Brahmadas. There's no reason to be discouraged. There's no reason to be discouraged. It's if there is an error in what you said, it's that these are such highly evolved human beings. These people are still very tribal.
Right. And to that effect, I watched a documentary on Swami Vivekananda, and he didn't always meet the most highly evolved people himself. At one point, in the movie, a angry mob chased him. Yes. And he had to hide behind two buildings. Otherwise, they would have done him great harm had they caught him. And I thought to myself, he wouldn't have been judgmental on those people. He would have just said, yeah, it's just, this is still God acting. I don't think he would have been as judgmental as we tend to be.
No, he would not have been, I'm sure, just from the little I understand of Vivekananda. In another instance, a preacher in the upper Midwest tried to poison him with some poison tea. And Sri Ramakrishna appeared beside him and said, don't drink that tea, it's poison. This is Swami Vivekananda's testimony. So we must not be discouraged. We can certainly be tormented by our compassion and our attachment to things that we think should be and ways that we think things should work. But let's not be discouraged. The truth
Well,
is far greater and far higher than.
Brother,
But let's let Divya go first.
Okay.
oh, it's okay. If you want to go ahead, that's fine too.
All right then, Alex, go ahead.
I was just going to say, actually yesterday I had I was watching the television, and on the television I saw a person who represents someone who's politically opposite to me and has a lot of power.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that person.
Good.
And if you ever want to feel darkness lifted, it's incredible.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for sharing that, Alex.
I think that's wonderful because it was kind of what I was going to say. I was going to go back to what we were been reading in Jnana Yoga in our class on Vivekananda, which is in the Mutiny of 1857, which happened right after there were these terrible massacres that the British perpetuated throughout India.
Mm-hmm.
And you recall the monk who was, I believe he was stabbed by a Muslim or something along those lines. And when the people went and caught the man and brought him to him, he said, oh no, thou art he.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think it goes back to that. We are that which we judge. We are that which we have trouble understanding. We are that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just no way around it.
Well,
And that love is, it's powerful. It's a powerful way of breaking that sense of powerlessness. I think that's that sense of separation that is created by conflict.
yes. On the 31st of this month, the talk will be on Swami Vivekananda's Bhakti Yoga, and that will be very much emphasized.
My brother Shankara.
Yes.
I know we're running out of time. I just wanted to make one last comment.
Please.
So I guess, before Krishna left the earth, he kind of said, after I leave, that the world would fall into the Kali Yuga. And so, I just wonder, why does God allow there to be so much darkness in the world? I know many saviors have come, during the Kali Yuga, Buddha came, Jesus came, Ramakrishna came during the Iron Age. So does God allow there to be darkness, or why is there, or does he allow saviors to come?
It's not a question of allowing or disallowing. When manifestation occurs, and you can find this in the first 3 chapters of Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga. If you want to catch up with us in what we're studying, which is now chapter 4 of Jnana Yoga on Wednesday evening, read the first 3 chapters, and Swami Vivekananda explains in detail how there is darkness as well as light within manifestation. And he says more than once, and he says, and this is Maya. This is Jagat. This is the nature of manifest reality. Darkness, light cannot exist without darkness, and vice versa. So it's very hard for us to accept. Brahmadas was speaking about being discouraged by some darkness that is no doubt heartrending. It was for me, it is for me, and tormenting. But there is the understanding behind that. There's nothing wrong in feeling the heart being wrung or feeling tormented by it, but there must be the understanding that this is very much a part of the play of, as you mentioned, Kali Yuga. And if we're to believe Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and Vivekananda, for that matter, Raja Maharaj, it's part of the ending of Kali Yuga. And if you want to have another completely different experience of somebody talking about the ending of a time period, a time in human history, go and find Michael Moore's film Trumpland, 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 and his explanation of what's going on. It's very interesting because his is a very self-determined and unique perspective, and it's wonderful.
Brother Shankara, can you repeat that one? Michael Moore's movie, he said.
Michael Moore. Go to his website, Michael Moore, and the movie is Trumpland, Trumpland, Trumpland. Okay. It's the movie that came out just before the 2016 election, and he explains what's going to happen and why, very presciently, and gives his own description of why this darkness fell across the American landscape.
Brother Shankar?
Yes, please.
I wanted to just say, I know we're trying to wrap up. I'll be very quick. Two things that
people can stay or go as they wish, Marla. You just take your time.
Okay. The first thing I found quite reassuring, and we kind of touched on that again, is that once you put out that minimal amount of effort, that there are powers and gurus that are reaching out to assist you. So it's not a one-way uphill, climb, all of your life, that you have assistance that will, at first it may not seem like it's there, but with time, you will gain access to it. And
they are waiting to take your hand, Marla, if you
So I put a link to the hymn because immediately you said it early on, his yoke is easy and his burden is light. Mm-hmm. So I put the Mormon Tabernacle Choir singing Handel's Messiah with that, his yoke is yoke is easy and his burden is light.
Beautiful. Yes, the Messiah is quite there's a triumphalist aspect to it, which comes with the time in which Handel wrote that. But it's a beautiful, beautiful piece of work, particularly that hymn.
And the second thing that really stood out to me was that when you talked about directing the 6 passions to God. And so that struck me that often we feel like we have to suppress, eliminate, get rid of these passions, rather than this is a complete reassurance that we can transform what would be a vice into an actual real virtue, that there is no need to eliminate that core energy that is part of that aspect. We just need to redirect, where it's going to and the qualities kind of around it. And so I find that extremely reassuring.
So do I, Marla. And the reassurance is so strong, not only in what Sri Ramakrishna said, and he says it more than once in the gospel, but it is in its really concise form in chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita. Sri Krishna just says, you want to be free of all this burden? Offer it all to me. And he means everything. He goes through an exhaustive list. And to the first time reader, it's kind of surprising what's included in that list. But yes, it's very reassuring.
Amadas here, Shankara.
Yes, Amadas. Good morning. Or
Good morning. I in the same way that I crave the energy, the power of us getting together like this and having these conversations, the same energy, different flavor is available for mob mentality. And there was an energy in that mob mentality. And I'm not proud to say this, but when I was much younger, and it wasn't destructive like what happened on the 6th, but I've participated in group activities that were destructive and mindless as a teenager. When I was working on my PhD in stupidity before I knew better. So I'm capable. And I'm so glad. I almost went to DC on Wednesday, and I'm so glad I wasn't there because I'm not sure anyway, the same thing to tie into what Tom was saying about experiential or the doing versus not doing. While I wouldn't have signed up to be an alcoholic, and I'm 12 years free of alcohol, that experience allows me to relate to people who are still active in that illness and allows me to offer things to them that would not have been available had I not had that human experience of being overwhelmed by alcohol.
Yes,
and
you are the only one who can truly, authentically offer them your hand in companionship and love because you so truly understand.
Exactly. And that's what makes AA work. If you have to explain alcoholism, then it's not an intellectual understanding that anybody's going to arrive at. But comparing experience, this is how the disease affected me, and this is some of the things that I did, it gets related to very easily. And I recall Ramakrishna numerous times offering for people to go out and experience life, or give in to your lust, up to and including give Girish Ghosh more wine, which he did. And until we're tired of it. And I got tired of alcoholism, and I've become tired of much of worldly life, which is why I submitted to ordination to become a monk. Because that's that call for me. I need that call, and I need this time for us together so that I can remind myself that the goal is God. Yes. Because my forgetter, it doesn't work as full-time as it used to, but it's still on the job. And I can forget my path.
Oh yeah.
And so I need all the help that I can get in moving towards the light, because I'm capable of all those things that we saw on TV on the 6th.
Ah, yes. This is what Saint Francis of Assisi said. True compassion and love can only flow from your eyes and your lips when you acknowledge that you are capable of any act.
Yes. I just hesitate, I guess, to put the blame on any one person or to condemn anyone, because that seems against the spirit of Christianity, and I think against the spirit of Vedanta. And it reminds me of what Swamiji was saying at the address, one of his addresses at the World Parliament of Religions. He says Christians must always be ready for good criticism, and I hardly think that you will mind if I make a little criticism. You Christians who are so fond of sending missionaries to save the soul of the heathen, why do you not try to save their bodies from starvation? You erect churches all through India, but the crying evil in the East is not religion. They have religion enough, but it is the bread that the suffering millions of burning India cry out for with their parched throats. And I think all over the world, even here.
Yes, well, all of what you said is true, Divya. And
it's just our spirit of relating.
I didn't hear any accusations of any individual from anyone, but if you did,
no, I just mean our as a social response to events that have occurred. What Swamiji always said, that even when one person acts out of a misguided or ill-directed intent, there is still some semblance of love there in that person. And
yes.
I always try to look for that.
Yes.
Mother Shankara, this is Katrina Collins. Can you hear me?
Hello there, Katrina. Yes, I'm so glad to hear from you.
Hi. Oh, what I've gotten out of today's lesson and this past experience since January the 6th, and the point you make today is that you've read a lot, you've heard a lot of speakers, and now's the time to look at how you think, how you be, how you do.
Yes.
And for me, that comes down to your beliefs. And you really question, we can say what we believe in, but then last night before I woke up, it came to my heart was, what are you believing? And then what are you really believing?
Mm-hmm.
And your heart really says what you really believe. Your words can be one thing, but your heart, in terms of the heart not being the physical heart, but the real deep down compassion of what your true beliefs are, that is really what determines what comes forward. And I think that is what ends up, I think we call it the gunas, what ends up coming into form.
Yes.
And when you said the point today is we have to look at really how we're doing, how we're being, and what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the transition we as a universe, as a global universe, that we're in at this moment.
Well, it's very interesting that you point that out, Katrina. Even the astrophysicists and quantum astrophysicists will tell you that the universe is changing, and we are part of that change. We are, yes.
And so Alex made a great point yesterday when he asked that question. And because it says, when you really sit down and think about what you believe and you give yourself, I heard somebody say the other day, think about what you believe and think, well, what if what you believe is not true?
Mm-hmm.
And when Alex spoke on yesterday and made his comment, I think that was very profound and very important, because it's like, if you could even get to the point to challenge your own beliefs, and regardless of whether you think your beliefs are good or bad, just challenge your beliefs. That's a very good place to be in, because it's hard. I think it's a challenge. And that's what I picked up from Alex saying yesterday. It's a challenge to even believe or even think that what you believe is not the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Because so much of your life and who you are sometimes is based upon that truth, that belief. Let me say that belief, not that truth. And if that belief ends up being not true, then it challenges the core of who you believed yourself to be, or who you
which
perceive others
is
to
why
be.
it's an austerity. It's a spiritual challenge to do this. And you're absolutely right. That is the challenge, to move from lower truth to higher truth. As long as we are not realized, as long as we have not come to the full realization, which cannot be put into words, of who we truly are, then we're living from some lesser truth. And so we move from lower truth to higher truth. And that continues and continues and continues as we dispel more and more of our ignorance and live from the knowledge, capital K knowledge, that comes from our spiritual center. But you're absolutely right. It's very challenging to constantly be doing that. It's to constantly be saying, here are the truths that I'm told by the great teachers. Here is a way of thinking, speaking, and acting that will lead me closer to divine realization. And how does that compare and contrast with how I currently think, speak, and act? And that's quite a challenge, and it is a continuous one. And as I believe Amadas said, my forgetter is fully in operation. So do I forget to do that? Yes, of course I do. Habits reassert themselves.
Brother Shankara.
Brother Shankara.
Yes, Keith. Let Keith go first, and then I think that was Swayam.
Yeah, and I'll be quick. Since reading the book that you mentioned, Learning How to Walk in the Dark, it has been transformative in how I look at darkness. I think it has been misconstrued. Not just that it is required for light, but that it is as important as light for our journey, because of all of the discoveries that are made in the dark. So that was something that book's resonated with me very well, and just made me look again at all of my thoughts about darkness, and even starting to look at the dark in more of a sacred manner, almost like an entity of its own in a way. But that's all I got.
Well, what Keith was speaking about is Barbara Brown Taylor's book, Learning to Walk in the Dark. And it is a profound meditation on our biases and our misunderstandings about darkness. And of course, as she so richly points out in all of her work, the only way that we learn is through experience. And we can think about things till we're blue in the face, but we have to. That's the next step beyond manana, is nididhyasana, and that's putting things actually into practice, doing it, and insisting on, yes, this is the way I'm convinced, this is the way, rather than the way I have been. And Keith was just talking about Barbara Brown Taylor doing that about darkness and coming to, as he used the word, transformative conclusions. Thank you, Keith. Now, was it Swayam that was speaking up at the same time as Keith?
No, Brother Shankara. I think it was someone else.
Brother Shankara, it was Neera.
That was Neera, yes.
Yes. I was just thinking that you said that how her thoughts, her speech and actions should be aligned. And what Thakur said, that if you don't do that, you're a hypocrite. It's hypocrisy.
Yes, but always remember that Sri Ramakrishna Thakur is not judging. He's simply observing and correctly identifying. He's not saying bad. He's just saying if the way you think, the way you act, the way you think, the way you speak, and the way you act are not aligned, this is a form of hypocrisy. And what does it belie? It belies some sort of self-deception. And you may be trying to deceive others as well, but it's rooted in your own self-deception. And so his charge, if you will, of hypocrisy is not a judgment and not saying that person is bad and wrong. They're simply saying that is a hypocritical way of behaving.
Okay, so just be honest to thyself.
Be to thine own self be true, and it follows as the night the day that thou canst not be false to anyone. I've changed the pronoun. Otherwise, it was Shakespeare.
Thank you.
Anything else, dears? This is so wonderful. This is the intention. This is this art of spirituality studied together. Thank you.
Thank you.
On hypocrisy, I heard a really interesting quote that stuck with me, and I don't know who said it, but the idea is that hypocrisy is actually so identifying hypocrisy is it's a really great opportunity, and there's a lot of hope in hypocrisy, because the quote is, hypocrisy is virtue tipping its hat or paying homage. It's vice tipping its hat and paying homage to virtue. In other words, that within hypocrisy, there is the acknowledgement implicitly of the higher good, which is why the hypocrisy arises. And so that within hypocrisy, there is the seed for overcoming hypocrisy, because there is the acknowledgement.
Wonderfully said. Anyone recognize the quote? Anyone know who said that? It's a good one. I don't know who said it either, but I have read it before also.
Yes.
And other things akin to that. Vice tipping its hat to virtue and saying, I want to imitate you.
It's beautiful.
Thank you, Alex. Anything else? All right. Let there be peace in all of outer space. Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees. May the gods be peaceful. May the whole universe be pervaded by peace. Let this infinite universal peace prevail throughout my being. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. So, as we also say, Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga Durga Durga. May you go forward in Mother's loving and protective embrace. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind. And,
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
thank you all for being part of this. This is just such a joy.
Hari Om.
Thank you, everyone.
Hari Om.
Until next time.